The Alien franchise has made an indelible mark on film history and future, but with prequels and sequels expanding the original story over a span of several decades, it can be hard to untangle what's really going on here. What's the Alien movie saga really about? Let's explore. The Alien movie story begins when a proto-human on Earth drinks a deadly poison that kills him and dissolves his body into strands of human DNA, which is then dosed into the water supply. Several million years later, Dr. Elizabeth Shaw believes she has found a map and an invitation to the planet where these proto-humans originated.
I think they want us to come and find them.
She calls them engineers, and she wrongly assumes they want to meet their children. Shaw and a scientific crew are hired by the Weyland Corporation to find the engineers on planet LV-223, and after a great deal of trouble, they arrive. But the engineers are all dead. Their spacecraft is filled with jars of toxic black goo, corresponding to egg-like sacs that begin to open when signs of life appear. Yes, Dr. Shaw finds her engineers, a lifelong passion bordering on obsession. But what she didn't expect to find was that the engineers had set a course to Earth with the intention of wiping out the human race they had created. The engineers never had their chance, as they themselves were wiped out by an ever-evolving neomorph, the predecessor to the xenomorph seen later in the series. Megalomaniacal android Dave decides to take up the engineer's mantle and infect the human crew.
Big things have small beginnings.
After chaos, destruction, and an encounter with a revived engineer who proves his hostility toward humans, David and Dr. Shaw escape to the engineer's home. Shaw's new obsession is understanding why the engineers plan to kill all the humans. Was greed one of the human foibles that led the engineers to want to eliminate us? It's Peter Weyland's greedy obsession for immortality that drives him to create the android David, who eventually surpasses his maker and winds up creating the xenomorph as we know it. Did the engineers know or come to suspect that human behavior would be the universe's eventual destruction? All signs point to yes. Dr. Shaw never actually makes it to the engineer's home planet, which she and David have been calling Paradise. Instead, David kills her and drops the black goo on the thriving planet. He cultivates xenomorph eggs and sends out a welcoming signal to try and attract new life forms to what is now his planet. The Covenant is a colonizer craft set out for one of the few remaining known habitable planets in the universe, Origai 6, along with an entire ecosystem on board. The Covenant crew is awakened from hypersleep years early, and on a hunch, they divert from their course to check out the signal coming from the unnamed planet.
A human being out there where there can't be any humans. A hidden planet that turns up out of nowhere and just happens to be perfect for us. It's too good to be true.
So much of the Alien story is based on humans terraforming faraway planets because the Earth was either becoming or already was uninhabitable. Thanks to climate change and war, the privileged few humans who could escape our planet did, and with apparent gusto. It didn't seem to bother them that they would spend decades of their lives in hypersleep to get to these planets and start rebuilding. Without these humans looking for new places to colonize, the xenomorph would never have found its perfect host to propagate its own species, with a little help from David. David has been engineering a new form of the xenomorph, a perfect organism that he can finally test on human subjects. With the crew on board the Covenant is Walter, the newest model android, whose census his counterpart is up to no good. When David finds out Covenant has an entire colony of hundreds of humans, it's a battle to stop him before he commandeers the ship for his own purposes. When he does, we start to realize why the engineers wanted to destroy their human creation. Like their ancestors, humans also decided to play God and created synthetic life in their own image. David's God complex mirrors his creator Weyland's, and now David has created a monster. In the alien vision of the future, android technology mirrors human emotional development. David and Walter are different models of clone androids in Prometheus and Covenant, designed by Peter Weyland for different means to different ends. David was a special creation, made to match Weyland's great intelligence and one day surpass it.
He is the closest thing to a son I will ever have. Unfortunately, he is not human. He will never grow old, and he will never die.
Walter was created to be a faithful companion to its human counterpart, a protector and source of support. As Alien begins, it's been 16 years since we left David and the spaceship Covenant. A salvaging team on the ship Nostromo answers a distress call on planet LV-426, even though they aren't equipped for a rescue mission. A hair second too late, Ellen Ripley figures out the distress call is actually a warning, but one of her crew, Kane, has already been infected by a xenomorph facehugger. Breaking quarantine protocols, Kane is allowed back on board, where the alien hatches and wreaks bloody havoc. Ash, a crew member who's secretly an android, receives a communique from people at the company who want him to bring the creature back alive no matter the human cost. Here, the android Ash is nowhere near as sophisticated as either David or Walter, presumably because these droids ended up being dangerously advanced. But Ash was also a danger to humans, especially once he got his marching orders to bring the xenomorph back alive. Disobeying orders, Ripley and her crew hunt the monster and eventually kill it. As one of the most memorable survivors put to screen, Ripley strikes a perfect balance between strength and vulnerability, as well as professionalism and competence. Even though she is met with disbelief when she first discusses the reality of the xenomorph, she refuses to be gaslighted. Ripley and the cat Jones are the only survivors who end this portion of the Alien Saga, tucked safely in hypersleep, waiting to be found by another ship. Interestingly, Jones was an excellent first alert system, since it tried to warn multiple people about the presence of the alien on board the Nostromo. And like Ripley, nobody listened to him at first, but Jones would go on to survive the series longer than any other human character outside of our well-known heroine. You'd think that when one of the deadliest and most virulent creatures to ever exist surfaces, the logical thing to do would be to exterminate it, especially if it has the power to destroy every planet it touches. But because of corporate greed, opportunistic humans attempt to capitalize financially off the creature at the expense of other humans with less powerful positions.
You sent them out there and you didn't even warn them. Why didn't you warn them, Burke?
The arrogance of man we see throughout the series is a scathing indictment of an obsession with violence and killing. There are few women in much of the Alien Saga, but it's the women who ultimately fight against these deadly obsessions. At the start of Aliens, Ripley has drifted in hypersleep for 57 years before she's awakened and ends up on the military vessel Sulaco. Unfortunately, the Sulaco is under instruction to return to LV-426, where Hadley's Hope, a human colony, has suddenly stopped responding to all communication. Ripley is in severe post-traumatic stress, which turns into grief when she finds out her daughter died on Earth while she was in hypersleep. Worse still, her claims about the alien monster with acid for blood aren't taken seriously enough to stop the mission.
Because if one of those things gets down here, then that will be all. Then all this bull that you think is so important, you can just kiss all of that goodbye.
On LV-426, the Sulaco crew and Ripley search the seemingly abandoned colony and find a new xenomorph nest. The eggs have already hatched and use the entire colony as incubators, with the exception of one survivor, a young girl named Newt. Newt is the same age Ripley's daughter was when she first left Earth, so Ripley is immediately protective of her. Once the Sulaco's military crew realize the xenomorph threat is as horrific as Ripley insisted, they try to escape. But as in Alien, once again corporate and military greed leads to sabotage, this time from Burke, who's determined to preserve a xenomorph specimen. He and the creature are both defeated, and Ripley survives, joined by Newt, Jones the cat, Corporal Hicks, and the torso of Android Bishop, who proves to be a portrait of empathy, one in which we can see shades of earlier Walter. The reveal that Ripley's daughter has died becomes key to her character. It explains why she's so protective of the women in her orbit going forward, especially young girls. Even by the time she's hybrid Ripley in Resurrection, she has a fierce maternal side, shown in the way she shields the android call, as well as the continued deep distrust of the company men. When hybrid Ripley has an alien baby who imprints on her, she's horrified and disgusted by the monster, but at the same time feels their connection and weeps openly when she has to kill it. Shortly after Ripley enters hypersleep on the Sulaco, a fire breaks out, killing everyone else on board and shooting her pod into space. It lands on penal colony Fiorina 161. But the Sulaco shuttle also crashes. But Ripley isn't the sole survivor. A xenomorph had also made it and had impregnated her before ejecting her onto Fiorina 161. The penal colony has essentially been abandoned by the people who created it, the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, until they find out there's a live xenomorph on board and that Ripley is carrying an alien fetus in her chest.
The company knows everything that happened on the ship. It all goes into the computer and gets sent back to network.
Because it is a prison planet run by convicts, there are no weapons to fight the monster other than a steel forge that hasn't been used in decades. Ripley and the prisoners still finally manage to kill the loose xenomorph, again at huge human cost. When Weyland-Yutani emissaries arrive, they're headed by Michael Bishop, the human template for the android Bishop. But Ripley knows better than to trust company men by now, and she throws herself into a pit of molten steel so nobody can try to weaponize the alien monster within her. Ripley's already sacrificed so much in fighting this creature. Here, she gives up the last thing she has left. Because humans can't seem to leave well enough alone when it comes to universe-destroying acid-blooded creatures, Alien Resurrection continues the story 200 years later, when the United Systems military is still trying to recreate a functioning xenomorph aboard the USS Auriga. Using Ripley's melded human and alien DNA recovered from Fiorina 161, new crops of military scientists tinker with her code to clone the xenomorph. They've engineered a hybrid version of Ripley who has green nails, acid blood, and vague memories from the original Ripley who died centuries before. The scientists have also finally created a working xenomorph, but like Ripley, it's not the same creature it once was. It's world smarter and understands English.
So, we're a fast learner.
A salvage team from the ship Betty boards the Auriga with human cargo that will be used to create more monsters for military might. A new android, Cool, is on her own mission to kill the hybrid Ripley before she can give the military the queen that was gestating in her chest. She fails her mission, but Cool's role here is also to show how android progression in the series has reached near human status, with a machine who's more human than inhuman. Ripley attempts to kill the queen before she gives birth, but is also too late. However, the queen doesn't give birth to eggs as the past queens have. Instead, it gives birth to a fully formed alien with many of Ripley's features. The huge baby alien kills the queen, thinking Ripley is his actual mother, and Ripley is forced to kill her baby while the Auriga crashes into Earth. Ripley finally makes it back to our home planet. Sort of.
I'm a stranger here myself.
Long before the Alien prequels introduced a neomorph, the creature evolved over the course of each original film, both in physicality and intelligence. While its evolution is confusing at first, by Alien Covenant we learn David is the father of the xenomorph as we know it from Alien and beyond. The black ooze cultivated by the engineers was a biological weapon with the ability to mutate its host, hence why we see several different versions of the monster over the course of Prometheus and Alien Covenant. The xenomorph is a perfect killing machine, and one of the sad lessons never learned by humans was to leave the thing alone. It cannot be tamed, it can only be killed, and even that proves an almost impossible feat for hundreds of years. Even though hybrid Ripley appears to kill the last of the xenomorphs, who knows whether they have persisted on another planet out in the universe, waiting for a meat sack to arrive and play host. Check out one of our newest videos right here, plus even more Looper videos about your favorite movies are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.